At a family BBQ, my father-in-law said, "She's worthless. Dump her." My husband nodded. Soon. I served burgers. Silent. A week later, their calls flooded my phone, but I'd left. Their words made me stronger. Now I'm free, and they regret it. My revenge is my triumph, and their pleas are just noise. So picture this. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon in July, and I'm standing over this Weber grill in my in-laws' backyard, flipping burgers like I'm some kind of short-order cook. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid mixing with the summer air, kids running around with those cheap plastic water guns from Dollar Tree, and everyone's nursing their third Bud Light of the day. I should have been having a blast, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. My husband Jake and I had been married for 3 years at this point, and these family gatherings always felt like walking through a minefield in flip-flops. His dad, Big Mike, and trust me, the nickname fit, had this way of making me feel about 2 inches tall without even trying. Or maybe he was trying. Looking back, I'm pretty sure he was. Jake's mom Linda was busy setting up the folding chairs she'd grabbed from Costco, arranging them in this perfect little circle like we were about to sing Kumbaya or something. His sister Kelly was sprawled out on this ancient lawn chair, scrolling through her iPhone and making these little huffing sounds every time someone asked her to help with anything. The whole scene was peak suburban America. You know, the kind of setup you see in those Chevy commercials where everyone's laughing and having the time of their lives. Except nobody told me I wasn't invited to the happiness part. I'd volunteered to handle the grill because, honestly, it gave me something to do with my hands. Plus, I actually knew how to cook, unlike half the people there who thought heating up frozen patties from Sam's Club counted as grilling expertise. The conversation was flowing like cheap beer, mostly complaints about work, gossip about neighbors, and the usual political arguments that make you want to hide in the bathroom. Until dessert. I was just minding my own business, making sure nobody's burger turned into charcoal, when I heard Big Mike's voice boom across the patio. "You know what Jake's problem is?" he said, and I could tell by his tone that this wasn't going to be good. "He's too nice, always has been." Jake was sitting maybe 10 feet away from me, Corona in hand, nodding along like his dad was dropping some serious wisdom. I kept my eyes on the grill, but my ears were locked onto every word. "Take his wife, for example," Big Mike continued, and my stomach dropped faster than a lead balloon. "She's nice enough, I guess, but what does she really bring to the table? She works at that little office job, makes decent money, but where's the ambition? Where's the drive?" I felt my face getting hot, and it wasn't from the grill. The spatula in my hand was shaking slightly, but I kept flipping those burgers like my life depended on it. She's always been kind of, I don't know. "Ordinary," Linda chimed in, and that word hit me like a slap. Ordinary. Like being a normal person was some kind of crime. Kelly looked up from her phone just long enough to add, "Yeah, and she's so quiet all the time. It's weird." But it was what happened next that changed everything. Big Mike took a long swig of his beer, looked directly at Jake, and said the words that would replay in my head for weeks. "Honestly, son, she's worthless. You could do so much better. You should dump her." The backyard went quiet for maybe 2 seconds, just long enough for the weight of those words to settle in. Then Jake, my husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me till death do us part, looked his dad dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, Dad, soon, soon. Not, what are you talking about? Not, don't say that about my wife. Not even a half-hearted, come on, guys, just soon." Like he'd been planning it, like they'd discussed it before. Like I was some kind of temporary inconvenience he was getting ready to take out with the trash. I stood there holding that spatula, watching the grease pop and sizzle, and something inside me just shifted. It was like one of those moments in movies where time slows down and everything becomes crystal clear. Except this wasn't a movie. This was my actual life, and these people, my own family, had just decided I wasn't worth keeping around. Update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading this far. I know this is getting heavy, but I promise it gets better. A lot of you are probably wondering what I did next. Did I confront them right there? Did I throw the spatula at Big Mike's head? The answer might surprise you. Also, quick question. For the comments, what would you have done in that moment? Because what I did next changed my entire life. I finished grilling those burgers, every single one. Made sure they were cooked perfect, just the way everyone liked them. Cheese melted, just right, buns toasted to that perfect golden brown. I even remembered that Kelly liked hers plain and Big Mike wanted extra pickles. Then I served them. Walked around that patio with a smile plastered on my face, handing out paper plates and asking if anyone needed ketchup or mustard. "Here you go, Mike. Extra pickles, just how you like it. Kelly, yours is plain, no cheese. Jake, medium rare like always." They all said thank you, actually said the words. Like I hadn't just heard them planning my disposal 5 minutes earlier. I sat down in one of those Costco chairs, ate my burger in complete silence, and listened to them talk about everything except what had just happened. Sports, weather, some drama with the neighbors, normal family stuff. Like they hadn't just casually discussed ending my marriage over cheap beer and charcoal smoke. The thing is, I wasn't even angry yet. That would come later. Right then, I was just empty. Like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that mattered, leaving behind this hollow shell that looked like me but felt like nothing. After about an hour, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Walked through their sliding glass door, past the family photos covering every surface, including several of Jake and me on our wedding day, all smiles and hope, and locked myself in their guest bathroom that smelled like those fancy Yankee candles Linda was always burning. I looked at myself in the mirror above their pedestal sink, and honestly, I didn't recognize the person staring back. When had I become so small? When had I started disappearing into the background of my own life? I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. My sister lived 2 states over, but she'd always told me I could crash at her place anytime. My best friend from college had been saying for months that I seemed unhappy. Even my mom, who usually minded her own business, had asked me recently if everything was okay at home. Maybe they'd all seen something I'd been too afraid to admit. I stayed in that bathroom for maybe 10 minutes just thinking, planning. When I came back out, the party was winding down, kids were getting cranky, someone had broken out the citronella candles to fight off the mosquitoes, and Big Mike was already talking about firing up the grill again next weekend. Same time next week? He asked Jake, and my husband nodded without even looking at me. Sounds good, Dad. We'll be here. We'll be here. Like it was a given. Like I just keep showing up to these things week after week while they slowly chipped away at whatever was left of my self-respect. The drive home was quiet. Jake had the radio on some sports talk station, occasionally making comments about the game or the traffic. I stared out the passenger window of his Chevy Silverado, watching the suburbs blur past, and realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd had a real conversation. Not about schedules or bills or whose turn it was, to take out the garbage. A real conversation about dreams or feelings or what we wanted out of life. When we got home to our little ranch house with the mortgage we'd stretched ourselves thin to afford, Jake grabbed another beer from the fridge and settled in front of the TV. Sunday night routine. ESPN, cold beer, and complete silence between us. I went to our bedroom and just sat on the edge of the bed for a while. The room felt different somehow. The wedding photos on the dresser, the mismatched furniture we'd collected over 3 years, of marriage, even the stupid throw pillows I'd bought at Target because I thought they'd make the place feel more like home. It all felt like it belonged to someone else. That's when I started making lists in my head. What was mine? What was his? What we'd bought together? How much money I had in my personal checking account? Whether my name was on both car titles or just his. Practical stuff. Escape plan stuff. I didn't sleep much that night. Jake was snoring next to me, completely unbothered by the conversation that had blown up my entire world. Around 3 in the morning, I got up and walked to the kitchen, made myself some tea, and sat at our little breakfast table in the dark. That's when it hit me. The anger. Not the screaming, throwing things kind of anger. The cold, calculating kind that settles in your chest and doesn't leave. The kind that makes decisions and sticks to them. By Monday morning, I had a plan. I went to work like normal, same commute, same office building, same desk I'd been sitting at for 2 years. But instead of diving into spreadsheets and emails, I spent my lunch break making phone calls. My sister first, who didn't even hesitate when I asked if I could stay with her for a while. Then my bank, to check on my account balance and transfer policies. Then a lawyer my college friend had recommended when she went through her own divorce. Jake had no idea. When he got home from his construction job that evening, I had dinner ready and waiting. Spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, even a salad because he'd been trying to eat healthier. We sat at our little table, same as always, and talked about our days. How was work? I asked. Same old stuff. Johnson's being a pain about the timeline on the Henderson project. You? Oh, you know, boring office stuff. He nodded, already reaching for the remote. End of conversation. Tuesday was the same, Wednesday too. I kept up the routine, dinner ready when he got home, laundry folded, bills organized. The perfect wife doing perfect wife things while secretly planning her exit strategy. By Thursday, I'd found a storage unit across town and started moving small things during my lunch breaks. Photo albums from before I met Jake, the jewelry my grandmother left me, clothes that were definitely mine and not gifts from him, books, a few kitchen items he'd never noticed were missing. Building my new life, one cardboard box at a time. Update. Okay, so I can see from the comments that some of you are getting impatient with me. Just leave already. Why are you waiting around? Trust me, I get it. But here's the thing. When you're planning to completely disappear from someone's life, you can't just wing it. You have to be smart about it. And what happened on Friday? Well, let's just say it confirmed that I was making the right choice. But first, tell me, have you ever had to plan a secret escape from your own life? Because the next part gets intense. Friday evening, Jake came home and immediately I could tell something was different. He was happy, like genuinely happy. In a way I hadn't seen in months. He even brought flowers, those cheap grocery store bouquets wrapped in plastic, but still. What's the occasion? I asked, genuinely confused. He set the flowers on the counter and gave me this huge grin. Just thought you deserved something nice. For about 30 seconds, I wondered if maybe I'd misunderstood what had happened at the barbecue. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe those horrible words hadn't meant what I thought they meant. Then he kept talking. Dad called me today, he said, grabbing a Coors Light from the fridge. He feels bad about last weekend, says maybe he was too harsh. My heart started beating faster. Oh? Yeah, he said he and Mom were talking, and they think maybe you just need some time to, I don't know, find yourself or whatever. Maybe take some classes, get a hobby, you know, become more interesting. Become more interesting. Like I was a book he'd gotten bored reading. That's thoughtful of them, I managed to say. Jake nodded, completely missing the sarcasm. Right? So Dad wants to have another barbecue this weekend. Kind of a fresh start thing. He's going to apologize properly, and we can all move forward. Move forward to what, exactly? More weekends of being picked apart like a Thanksgiving turkey? More conversations about my inadequacies? Over grilled meat and potato salad? I was thinking, Jake continued, maybe you could make that potato salad everyone likes, the one with the bacon bits. Really show them you're making an effort. Show them I was making an effort to prove I deserve to exist in my own marriage. That's when I knew, absolutely, completely knew, that leaving wasn't just the right choice. It was the only choice. Sure, I said. I'll make the potato salad. Jake beamed like I'd just solved world hunger. Great! This is going to be awesome. Things are really going to turn around for us. For us. Right. That night, after Jake fell asleep, I finished packing the last of my important stuff. Then I wrote a letter. Not some dramatic, emotional thing, just a simple explanation. I wasn't happy, I didn't think he was happy either, and I thought we both deserved better. I mentioned the lawyer I'd already contacted and left his business card on the kitchen counter next to the note. I didn't mention the barbecue conversation. I didn't mention his dad calling me worthless or him agreeing to dump me soon. I figured he'd figure out I'd heard eventually, but I wasn't going to give him the chance to explain it away or make excuses. Saturday morning, I got up early and made that potato salad. Used the good bacon from the deli counter at Kroger, real mayo instead of the cheap stuff. Even added chives from the little herb garden I'd been trying to grow in our kitchen window. Made it perfect, just like everything else I'd been doing. For 3 years, I left it in the fridge with a note on top. For the barbecue, enjoy. Then I loaded my car, a little Honda Civic that was mine, bought and paid for before I'd ever met Jake, and drove away from that house, that life, that version of myself that had somehow forgotten she was worth more than potato salad and apologies. From people who'd never respected her in the first place. I drove for 6 hours straight, stopping only for gas and terrible coffee from highway rest stops. My sister lived in a college town in Tennessee, and when I pulled into her driveway around 2 in the afternoon, she was already waiting on the porch with a glass of sweet tea and the biggest hug I'd gotten in years. You did it, she said. You actually did it. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The phone calls started around 6 that evening. Jake first, confused and angry. Where are you? What is this note supposed to mean? Come home so we can talk about this. Then Big Mike, all bluster and indignation. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. Jake's a good man, and you're throwing away a perfectly good marriage over what? Hurt feelings? Linda left a voicemail. That was somehow worse. All fake sweetness and concern. Honey, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We love you like family. Please just come home and we'll work this out. Kelly sent a text. This is so stupid. You're ruining everything. I didn't answer any of them. Not that day, not the next day, not the day after that. By Tuesday, the calls were getting desperate. Jake had apparently driven to the storage unit and found it empty. He'd called my work and discovered I'd put in for a transfer to our company's Nashville office, something I'd arranged months earlier, back when I'd still been trying to convince myself I could fix our marriage by changing geography. The transfer came through Wednesday morning. New job, new city, new life. My sister helped me find a little apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. All mine. No compromise on paint colors or furniture or whether to get cable or just stick with streaming services. For the first week, I felt like I was in some kind of bubble. Everything was so quiet without Jake's constant sports commentary and his family's weekly drama. I could eat cereal for dinner if I wanted to. I could watch whatever I wanted on TV. I could go to bed when I was tired instead of waiting for him to finish whatever game was on. It was terrifying and wonderful and lonely and perfect all at the same time. The calls kept coming, getting more pathetic each time. Jake started leaving these long, rambling voicemails about how he'd changed, how he told his dad to back off, how we could work it out if I'd just come home and talk to him. Big Mike actually apologized. A real apology, not just, I'm sorry you were offended, but I'm sorry I said those things. Too little, too late. About a month after I left, my divorce lawyer called with an update. Jake had finally hired his own attorney, and they were pushing for counseling, for mediation, for anything that would bring me back to the negotiating table. He seems to think this is all a big misunderstanding, my lawyer said. He wants to know what it would take to fix things. Nothing, I told her. There's nothing he can do to fix this because it's not broken. It's over. The funny thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Jake, not at his family, not even at myself for staying as long as I did. I was just done. Like closing a book after reading the last page. The story was finished, and it was time to start a new one. My new life started small. Grocery. Shopping for one. Learning to cook meals that I actually wanted to eat instead of whatever would make someone else happy. I joined a hiking group and discovered I actually loved being outdoors when it wasn't centered around grilling meat and drinking beer. I started taking photography classes at the community college and found out I had a decent eye for it. 6 months later, I met someone at a coffee shop. Nothing dramatic, just a conversation that turned into more conversations, then dinners, then long walks around the city. He was an art teacher at the local high school, divorced himself, with 2 kids he shared custody of. He was kind and funny, and thought my photography was actually good, not just nice hobby, good. We've been together for 8 months now, and it's nothing like my marriage was. We talk about everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams, our failures. He listens when I tell stories about my day, and I actually want to hear about his. When we disagree about something, we work it out instead of just letting it fester. When his kids come to stay, they include me in their games and ask me to help with their art projects. It's not perfect, nothing ever is, but it's real in a way my marriage never was. Jake still calls sometimes, though less frequently now. The last voicemail he left was about 3 weeks ago, just before what would have been our 4th wedding anniversary. He said he'd been thinking about me and hoped I was happy. He said he understood now why I'd left, and he was sorry it took him so long to figure it out. He said he hoped someday I might be able to forgive him. I might, eventually. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back, and I think he's finally starting to understand that. Update. Wow, this got longer than I expected, but I wanted to share the whole story. I know some of you were waiting for me to get some dramatic revenge, or make them all pay somehow. But honestly, my revenge was living well. My revenge was becoming the person I was always supposed to be instead of the small, quiet version of myself I'd somehow turned into. The best part is seeing how my life has turned out versus theirs. Jake's still single, still living in the same house, still going to those weekly barbecues. Big Mike and Linda ask mutual friends about me sometimes, and I hear they feel terrible about how everything went down. But here's my question for you all. Do you think the best revenge is living well, or should I have done something more dramatic? Because looking back, I'm pretty sure I chose the right path. These days, I wake up in my little apartment with the morning light streaming through windows I chose, next to someone who thinks I'm fascinating instead of ordinary. I make coffee, the way I like it, strong and black, and I check my phone to see texts from friends who actually enjoy my company. My photography has gotten good enough that I've started selling prints at local art fairs. Nothing that'll make me rich, but enough to fund my new hobby of traveling to national parks on weekends. I've got pictures hanging in 3 coffee shops downtown, and last month someone commissioned me to photograph their wedding. I keep in touch. With my sister, obviously, but I've also reconnected with old friends who'd somehow disappeared during my marriage. Turns out, I'd been the one who'd pulled away, too focused on trying to be the wife Jake wanted instead of the person I actually was. The woman I am now would have handled that barbecue completely differently. She would have set down that spatula, looked Big Mike right in the eye, and said exactly what she thought about his opinion. She would have asked Jake point blank what he meant by soon and demanded an answer. She wouldn't have spent a week planning a secret escape because she wouldn't have been afraid to leave in broad daylight. But maybe I needed to be that quiet, careful person for a while to become this confident one. Maybe I needed to plan and plot and strategize to prove to myself that I was capable of taking control of my own life. Either way, I'm grateful for that terrible afternoon in July. It was the push I needed to stop settling for a life that was slowly suffocating me. It taught me that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone involved, even the people who hurt you, is to walk away before the resentment turns you into someone you don't recognize. Jake deserves to be with someone who thinks he's amazing exactly as he is. His family deserves someone who genuinely enjoys their company and fits into their dynamic. And I deserve someone who sees my quietness as thoughtfulness, my ordinariness as authenticity, my worthiness as a given instead of something I need to prove. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting in my own apartment, writing about the best decision I ever made while my boyfriend graded papers at my kitchen table and asked my opinion about whether his students' art projects deserved A's or B's, I would have thought they were talking about someone else's life. But here I am, living someone else's life, my own, finally. And it turns out I'm pretty good at it. The last text I got from Jake was 2 weeks ago. Just 3 words. I was wrong. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Maybe someday I'll write back and tell him I hope he's found someone who makes him happy. Maybe I'll tell him I'm grateful for the years we had together because they taught me what I didn't want. Or maybe I'll just keep living this beautiful, ordinary, worthless life that somehow turned out to be exactly what I needed. Either way, I'm not serving anyone else's burgers anymore. These days, I'm too busy living my own life to cater to anyone else's expectations. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all.